regardless of where you're working, your tablet is at the right angle for you to see, work, read, or enjoy clearly. We've also found it's actually really useful with a notebook if you're typing up copy, or indeed if you're following a recipe in the kitchen. The stand will hold a reasonable size hardback book. When you're ready to go, the stand folds down very quickly.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Reopening, Restarting, and Resuming Live Performing Arts. My name is Krista Bradley, and I'm the Director of Programs and Resources at the Association of Performing Arts Professionals. Closed captioning for this webinar will appear automatically on your screen. If you would like to disable the chat transcript, please click More on the bottom of the Zoom window and hide subtitle as indicated on the slide. APAP is located in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the ancestral lands of the Piscataway and the Anacostan people, who have stewarded this land throughout generations. I would like to pay my respect to the Piscataway and the Anacostan elders, both past and present. In addition to the Zoom platform, we are also broadcasting today's webinar on Facebook Live. During today's webinar, Zoom participants will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide comments using the Q&A and chat functions. Unfortunately, we will not be taking questions or comments via Facebook Live. Today, our panelists will be responding to questions from the audience. If you have questions for our panelists, we ask that you submit them using the Q&A box. APAP welcomes the open exchange of ideas at our events. The views expressed by speakers or participants in this webinar event are those of the speaker or participants and not necessarily of APAP. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our President and CEO, Lisa Richards-Toney.
Thank you, Krista. Good afternoon, good day, everyone. Welcome to our kickoff for this new monthly webinar series, Reopening, Restarting, and Resuming Live Performing Arts. APAP is committed to providing you with up-to-the-minute resources and information, guidance, and support to help you navigate the return to in-person live events and touring. Over the next several weeks and months, we'll be highlighting the topics and issues related to returning to live performance, hosting discussion with colleagues and experts at the forefront of these efforts. We welcome your input and your feedback on the information you must need. We're so glad you're here. We're stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our panel. We have 3 people with us today. Charles Santos currently serves as the Executive and Artistic Director of Titus Dance Unbound in Texas and has had extensive career in the performing arts nonprofit field of presenting, performing, and producing. Titus Dance Unbound plays a vital role in furthering dance and exploring the North Texas cultural landscape to global arts, creates cultural collaborations, and building upon important international relationships for the organization and that city. Also joining us today is Bill Steffen, the Executive Director and Chief Artistic Officer for the Lead Center for the Performing Arts. Prior to that, he was Director of Nampa Civic Center in Idaho for 10 years and the Managing Director of Idaho Dance Theater. Under Bill's leadership over the last 10 years, the Lead Center has more than doubled ticket sales and contributed income, built the Lead Commons, renovated the Carson Theater, and has strived to create a safe place for performances during the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, our moderator for today's event is Laura Sweet, who serves as the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Des Moines Performing Arts. She serves as chair of the International Association of Venue Managers Performing Arts Managers Committee, is a frequent presenter on safety and security for APAP, and is co-chairing our reopening working group. So Laura, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't we get started?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. As Krista said, I'm Laura Sweet, and I use the pronouns she and her. I'm wearing, I'm a white 51-year-old woman with medium length dark blonde hair. I'm wearing a dark gray animal print sweater, and I'm in my office at the Lead Center with pictures of family and favorite events, including a few tickets from the Lead Center behind me. I acknowledge I am on the traditional ancestral unceded land of the Bajoji, Iowa, Sauk, and Meswaki Fox people. We offer our respect to their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. We recognize that our presence here today is the result of ongoing exclusions and the erasures of Indigenous peoples who were here originally as stewards of this land. We also extend these acknowledgements to our locations and tribes represented by our home office for APAP, our conference home in New York City, and of course for the locations of our other two presenters today. So welcome to our session on reopening and resuming performing arts. This is the first, as they noted, of an ongoing series for how colleagues are planning for and already resuming live in-person shows. Many of us are talking about and preparing for reopening, but today we have the chance to hear from two colleagues who are actually already live, rolling up their sleeves and presenting live performances in their markets. Since we know we can't cover all elements around adapting to the ever-changing conditions, what we're focused on today are safety elements, including protocols and preparations that our two presenters have undertaken, and the programming, booking, and budgeting approaches they've pursued with their live events so far. So up first, I think we'll hear from Bill Steffen. Bill, you want to join us and share a few thoughts?
Yes. Well, thank you, Laura. And I'm with the Lead Center for Performing Arts. As mentioned, my pronouns are he and him. I am a white man with short hair, goatee, and glasses. I have a brown jacket, blue shirt, and a red tie. I thought we'd kick things off with a video from Lincoln, Nebraska's Mayor Baird, who recently recorded this video for us. So let's kick off with the video.
It's such a joy to be here at the Lead Center as they open up for their spring season. And I just want to say what an incredible partner the Lead Center and the university have been with our health team. They know how to create a safe environment to protect artists and patrons so that you can come here and experience music and performance that will lift your spirits and help us all keep going and have a chance to connect as we make progress through this pandemic. The Lead is a wonderful place. It's a safe place. You will be well taken care of here and your spirits will be lifted. Welcome back to the Lead.
So that was a little video that we did to just share with the community what's happening at the Lead Center, and it's a safe place to visit, and that we all need the arts in our lives to uplift our spirits and hope and things. The Lead Center for Performing Arts is Nebraska's Performing Arts Center as part of the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And we are on the past, present, and future homelands of the Pawnee, Ponca, Omaha, Dakota, Lakota peoples, as well as other tribes. In a normal year, the Lead Center presents a season of more than 40 or more attractions, ranging from Broadway shows and top dance artists to classical music, jazz, global arts, theater, comedy, and family programs. We often say we program something for everyone. Our primary venue has 2,200 seats, but we have a 200-seat black box theater and other venues we also utilize. In March of 2020, when the pandemic hit, we shut down along with the rest of the nation, and we wondered, how are we going to fulfill our mission during this time? And it seemed likely that we would be closed for some time. And so we launched a free online program 2 weeks after our first event, canceled in March 2020. We quickly found out with that weekly program that technology was a challenge. And with people using their cell phones, broadcasting at home. We identified that we want to get a high definition broadcast system to share events from the Lead Center. And so we received a grant in August, and we've been able to not only present most of our shows in person since we reopened in July of 2020, but we also have in-person shows and online programming. And we were really honored to have a little shout out. Let's see here. From the New York Times just last month, talking about the fact of our programs being online and in person. They were a little surprised, and yes, they have a spring season which featured the likes of Kelly O'Hara, the Silk Road Ensemble, and mandolinist Chris Thiele. We reopened in July of 2020. Our first events were local events in July and August, dance recitals, which filled capacity. We found that our local artists were sometimes more popular than touring artists because of the local connection with families. And this is a photo of what it looks like with our socially distanced seating. This is a standing ovation on St. Patrick's Day with Michael Landra and Celtic Fire. And you can kind of see what it looks like to have an audience with masks and with social distancing. We booked our fall and spring season multiple times, as I'm sure many of you have experienced what it's like to try to program during the pandemic. A lot of virtual programs as well as in person. Our opening show is Musical the Musical, which is one of the longest off-Broadway shows in history. And they opened our season, the first off-Broadway or on-Broadway show to perform since the opening of the pandemic. With the original New York cast. They all took COVID tests prior to coming to Nebraska, and the entire cast remained healthy following their visit and returned to New York. Other shows we had this year during the pandemic include Derrick Davis, the longtime Phantom of the Opera. We had him as our Phantom the previous year. He created a brand new show just for us on Broadway. The Reminders, Dixie's Tupperware Party. And Dixie's Tupperware Party had 1,000 people come to it over the week. And if you're not familiar with her happy hour, you may want to check that out because it's a great fundraiser for you in the virtual programming. Mike Super Illusionist, pianist Behzad Abdurrahimov, The Modern Gentleman, Dino Light, Michael Launder and Celtic Fire, Chris Thiele just last week. This is our brochure. Let's see here, maybe. No, I'll have to show a brochure another time of our programming. One last photo I'd like to share with you about our programming. In addition to our programs at the Lead Center, we also took the arts into neighborhoods. And this is one of our most popular programs of fulfilling our mission. It's called Music on the Move. And it brought a portable stage, as you can see, pulled by a bike into a different neighborhood each week. And people were dancing in their neighborhoods. We let them know in advance that we were coming. So they knew we were going to be in their neighborhood, and they were following in the streets, socially distanced, having picnics. It was just really wonderful. A little parade, socially distanced parade to bring the arts and happiness. Some people had birthday parties at that time, so they had a little entertainment at their birthday. It was really inspirational. So those are a little bit about what's been happening at the Lead Center over the past 12 months.
Thank you so much, Bill. It was lovely to see Larry and just get a snapshot of what you've been up to in Lincoln. Charles, would you like to jump on and give us a few initial thoughts?
Good afternoon. I realize it's now afternoon. I'm Charles Santos. I'm in Dallas, Texas. I run a company called Titus Dance Unbound. We've been around for 40 years. We're in our 40th season. I've been running it for 20. We are now, until about 8 years ago, we were a dance and music presenter doing 5 and 5. Now we are a dance only presenter doing 10 dance companies a year and then a big gala. 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the AT&T Performing Arts Center was about to open, and we entered into a unique partnership, what we call a co-pro with them. And that's when we decided to shift to dance only, to be more curatorial. As they were developing their profile for what they were presenting, everyone knew us for dance, as we were a dance only, the dance presenter in this region. So we migrated to dance only. And so that now we do 10 companies a year normally, and the gala. We use three venues actually. We use the Winspear Opera House, which is a 2,200 seat opera house, a 2,000 seat outdoor stage called Strauss that we use from time to time. And then we use a 750 seat venue that is operated by the city called the Moody Performance Hall. All of them are great. They're all obviously great for dance, but we mostly are in the 750 and the 2,200. And I think in the interest of time, I'm gonna just let this go into the discussion so that we can answer questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Charles. And maybe we'll have Bill join us back again, and the three of us can get into a little bit more specific content focused on safety elements, maybe protocols, preparations. Bill, do you want to get us started and just share some specifics around how you got everything ready at the Lead Center for welcoming back guests?
Sure. Well, as soon as we closed in March of 2020, we immediately started thinking, what's it going to take to reopen? And we started doing research of, what the best protocols would be and health precautions. We utilized the guidelines from the CDC, the World Health Organization. We were lucky enough to have the University of Nebraska Medical Center as a partner, which is part of our system. And so they published some significant research and recommendations that the whole entire university system followed, which we're part of. And of course, we work closely with the University of Nebraska leadership, which they were not only dealing with the Lead Center, but also bringing students back. We had students in person in classes this year, at least partial classes, socially distanced. The Lead Center actually was a classroom, one of the nicest classrooms, maybe probably the nicest classroom on campus. We had chemistry classes and other things 5 days a week, which was interesting to have performances in the evening and have classes during the day. So that was something that's been very unique. In addition to the University of Nebraska, we also work closely, as the mayor mentioned, with the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department. And altogether, we put together some in-depth guidelines of how to reopen safely and maintain safety. We also looked at some studies. There's a few studies out there. Germany did a study related to 2,000 seat halls that found that, a 2,000 seat hall is a safe place to be if you take, the proper precautions. Also, there's been a variety of studies related to woodwind instruments and singing of best practices. And so we utilize those studies in addition to all the other guidelines that I mentioned. And I'm really pleased to share, that we have had dozens and dozens of events since July, thousands and thousands of patrons, and we have not had any reports of anyone becoming sick with COVID-19 related to being at the Lead Center. Knocking on wood, and it's been a challenging time, and I know Charles has a similar track record thanks to the precautions that they've taken. The core things that we did was masks were required for patrons at all times from the very beginning. I was prepared to do that alone, even if the university did not make that a general policy, because I strongly believe from the very beginning. I had masks already in my cupboard prior to the pandemic. And so I'm a big believer in masks, and I think they've been a key to our safe operation at the Lead Center. And we also didn't have intermissions. We had shortened programs so that people weren't having to go to the restroom, no concessions. People had their masks on the entire time. And I think that's been a big part of our health success. We did notifications to patrons, reminding them that if they had any symptoms of COVID-19, fever, cough, shortness of breath, or if they've been exposed to someone with COVID-19, to please not attend our in-person event. We made refunds very easy and no questions asked. We're happy to give you your money back. For whatever reason, we're happy to do that. And lots of on-site signage as you are entering the building, in addition to these multiple messages they received in writing, in snail mail, as well as online and email, and with the ticket purchases. Intense disinfecting of all commonly touched surfaces and the entire seating area anytime we had an event. We added lots of touchless features, promoted digital tickets and scan tickets from a distance. We did foot door pulls in the restroom so you didn't have to touch the handles. Additional bathroom touchless sinks and toilets, hand sanitizer stations everywhere, we upgraded our air filters to have MERV air filters to purify the air and maximize fresh air in the building through the ventilation system. And so those are some of the things that we did. Would you like me to share a little bit about the back house, front of house, some of those precautions, or would we like to get to that later?
Well, I think that's a great launching pad. And maybe Charles, if you want to share anything distinct, I mean, that's a pretty comprehensive list. So thinking about your situation in Texas, instead of going back through the things that were similar to what Bill did, is there anything you did differently or anything that you added to that list that Bill was speaking about?
We all did that. I think one of the critical things, well, there was a lot of stuff happening through this process. You know, the international presentations went first because borders got closed, and it was all about problem solving, all about, you know, how to handle the tickets. But an important thing happened a year ago, and we are in the Arts District in Dallas, and so we have an Arts District organization, and every Friday, all the CEOs in the Arts District, we meet virtually, and we have now for every week for a year. And it's this powerful group of people, and I say powerful not because of who they are, but what it was the information that was being shared. It was a very open and frank conversation every week about who's got what situation, what are y'all doing, what have you heard, who are the protocols, who's got a deal on PPE equipment, who's got, you know, it was all of this. And so together we developed a re-entry guidelines for museums and for our theaters. And we went through, you know, sharing information, and the AT&T Performing Arts Center did the bulk of the work, certainly, that I had to, you know, to deal with, because they had the venue. Everything that Bill was talking about, the center has also done. We also were, you know, there's a lot of talk about liability. So we had we updated the terms and conditions when you go through the purchase path for tickets, and everyone had to click, they had agreed to the health protocols that we had added to the terms and conditions when you buy a performance ticket at the center. And, you know, you have to click through it to make sure that you can finish your purchase path. Those were important. These were things that were important that was one of the ways that we let people know of all the things that we were doing. We were very specific. We are continuing, even though Texas has reopened at 100%, and our governor has lifted the mask mandate, none of us have done that. We are all maintaining mask protocols for the unforeseeable, you know, future. We are still doing mandated social distancing. We'll probably start loosening that up as we move through the summer and into the fall. But this group of leaders, and in the group is also the representatives from the city. We were getting, you know, new information every week, as all of us have been, about, you know, the state of the pandemic, new restrictions from the federal or state or our county or city governments. And we were getting these updates every week. And then I started a group every other week with all the other arts groups, just to share the information, because knowledge was power. And we found that the best way to get through this was to collaborate and communicate. So that was really how we led into the, you know, to being able to open the building. Now we had, I think, the only live, well, I know we had the only live dance performance. I think we had the only live performance in the hall in the fall for sure. We did Parsons Dance Company in November, and they were working in a bubble with very strict protocols. And the only way we were able to make that work was a lot of communication with the right people, not just me, but, you know, the tech director and whomever, all of our staff, to make sure that there weren't going to be any breaches in the protocol. We had to change the way we did a lot of things, how food was served to the dancers. Everything had to be individually packaged. We could no longer do buffets. We sequestered a part of the backstage area, you know, so that there's no one walking through those hallways. The dancers were there. We asked them, we got an empty floor in the hotel, which was easier to do then than now, but we put them on an empty floor. We requested that the dancers come to the theater all day, like from 8 a.m. to the end of the day, so that we could maintain the bubble and serve all their meals. We worked with a dance company to share the expense of meals so that they could maintain that environment. But it was a daunting task. But, you know, I think one of the things that was important to know, and Bill does this naturally, is to be optimistic that it can be done. We could figure out a way to do this. And it isn't going to work for everybody, but we were able to make it happen. We did 3 shows from then to now. And then we're about to do 3 more before the summer's out and before we start our new season.
You bring up a great point, Charles. I love the fact that you are collaborative with your local arts community. And I know that both you and Bill have had intersection with the other industry-specific reopening materials that have been published. The International Association of Venue Managers, of course, the Performing Arts Consortium, NEVA, everybody's kind of been trying to provide resources for us all to use. And Bill started to get into something, and then Charles, you were riffing off it in a really important way regarding the importance of front of house and back of house and the nuance between how to handle some of those specific challenges. I know with the IVM guide in particular, there's a set of questions for backstage for you to consider rather than just a list of here's what to do, which I think is brilliant. Charles and Bill, before we move on to the other section, anything related to either specifically back of house or specifically front of house that you haven't covered yet that you'd like to just touch on?
Well, one thing we did the deck crew all got tested. We required they all got, and they were all tested just before the company came. And then there was a lot of strict protocols there. No one was allowed backstage. To enter the opera house, in particular back of house, you had to be screened. So the APAC got the screeners and you had to wear a button that said you were screened to enter the building. One of the things that we had to keep reminding people as the governments were sending out updates, they said, oh, we're going to be opening up to 50%. Well, you have to, like any writer, the devil was in the details. You have to read the details, and it said, we can open up, but you have to have every other seat empty. Well, every other seat empty puts you at 50% as a starting point. And then when you start socially distancing, so we were really down to 30% the whole time. It never changed because they didn't take that out of the guidelines. So we kept reminding people that that's a protocol. But like Bill said, that we had special things on the handles. We opened up the chamber to the performance hall an hour before curtain, as opposed to 30 minutes before curtain, to not have people lingering. No food was allowed in the hall. Intermissions were cut. We did our Q&As virtually pre-show to accommodate that. They were trying to say, well, we could pass a microphone around. I say, oh my God, it's too much work in the hall with masks on. We'll just do it pre-show. But it was really about preparedness, and just, you can't ask enough questions. There were no stupid questions in preparing for these things.
Brilliant. And Bill, how about you? Back of house, front of house, any additional specifics you want to just highlight?
Sure. On the topic of temperature checks, that was something that we were really debating about, before we reopened. And we had a lot of discussion, both with the university and internally, and we decided that we would not do temperature checks to the public. And as I reflect on it, I'm glad that we didn't. As our recent conversation with Charles and I, we were talking about that really a temperature check doesn't totally tell you that the person's not infected. And so it's really, not as you might think. We do require temperature checks to enter the building for all staff, crew, and employees of the Lead Center. So we are doing that for the back of the house and employees. So that's one of those things that isn't always done by everybody and isn't consistent, but obviously is pretty standard in so much of our society currently. Masks are required backstage at all times, for the artists, except for when they're in a room by themselves. So we did allow them to take off their mask if they're by themselves in a dressing room. We did allow the artists to come up with their own individual safety plan about how they wanted to interact with each other, because as a venue, many of them were potting together and rehearsing together prior to coming, and they were testing prior to coming. We did strongly recommend for them to test right before they came to the Lead Center, but we did not require it. We strongly encouraged it. Our staff and the university have been doing an intense testing program throughout this time period, and we feel like that's really helped us maintain a good health. On the seating side of things, we had 25% seating capacity, and which is about 550 in round numbers of 2,200 seats. And so I'll share our seating map. This is what our map looked like for social distance seating is. And as you can see, it's a little bit of like a checkerboard. We physically went in and measured 6 feet from every pair of seats. You'll notice that there's a few singles in there. We mostly went with doubles because that's We did research and most people do attend as 2 people. Due to the way the hall is laid out, we found that there were opportunities to have some groupings. So we had some groupings of 4 tickets, 6 tickets in some locations for families that were social distancing together to be able to sit together. And that did allow us to have a few more seats than if we just did everything in doubles or singles. And this system seems to have worked pretty well. One of the things is a lot of different people were thinking, different ways of doing the seating map. And we found that the approach that we had limited the amount of people having to cross over others to get to their seats, which is another one of our objective, in our seating map. In common areas, we did the stickers, which you've seen, all over, at places. We did have people monitoring the crowd as they were coming in and in places to make sure that if people were not respecting 6-foot distancing, that, we were asking them to please keep their distance. We had a giant 6-foot ruler that we had in different locations, just as a visual reminder to help people. Had a good time laughing about the 6-foot ruler. Let's see here. I think that we opened the house early. So, I know Charles did the same thing in terms of providing more time for people to get in and out and reduce the crowding during the before a show.
I will say, Laura, that we didn't have, I should say, we haven't had any real conflicts with patrons about whether or not, about the mask, wearing a mask. In Texas, they removed the mandate, so I expect we'll have some of it, but we're all sticking to our guns on this. We also had a unique scenario in that we have a space called Hammond Hall, which is sort of the rehearsal event room of the Opera House, and it has a separate HVAC system and a separate entrance. So we told people when we were doing Parsons in November, if you want to come but you don't want to be in the chamber, we could put you in Hammond Hall and they could go in through this exterior entrance and watch it on a high def projection. And we had about 8 couples take us up on it, and they were so grateful for the accommodation. And like with any ADA compliance issue, we also had to realize we don't have to have room for everybody that might want it. We have to make a reasonable accommodation. We could accommodate up to 18 tables of 2 in this room and have them socially distanced. And that was what we could do. And that was okay. And just realize that was going to be fine. And just to a point that Bill made, we did a lot of lobbying in the fall as they were allowing sports to return to the stadiums or to courts, but not the audiences, that the stage needed an exception, that if the dancers or actors chose to work, they should be able to do that. And we'll have all the protocols off stage that we need and in the front of house. But if the athletes could do it, why can't, if these companies were prepared to work in that way, we should be, accommodate how they wanted to perform. Yep, indeed. Well, maybe this is a good chance for us to segue into the next section of our time together. I think what we wanted to focus on next would be programming, artistic booking, and budgeting. Maybe each of you could think about what you'd like to share related to the kinds of, and Charles, you've shared some of this about the dance companies. By the way, I would kill or die to see Parsons in person. Oh my gosh. But think about sharing information on what you're seeing in terms of community demand and interest, how ticket sales are going, what's going well, what's going not well. And we did have a question around what it's like in terms of the sparsely social distance venue. How does that feel for audiences, and are you getting any comments about that? So maybe Bill, would you like to start with some thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, just addressing what it feels like to be in a socially distanced hall. Visually, it takes a little getting used to, but I think so many people are thankful that they're not next to each other during this time. That's what they're thinking is am I in a safe place? And so when they see how much space they have, you have a lot of space. As you saw in that photo that I showed earlier, there's a lot of space everywhere around you. There's place for you to put your coat next to you. You can get up and dance in the show and nobody's sitting behind you. You've just got a lot of space. The Lead Center is fortunate to be a pretty live hall. And so even if you only have 300 people in the 2,200 seat hall, when you clap, when you laugh, it's vibrant and it feels good. And everybody was so happy to be there and so thrilled to see the arts again. Artists cried backstage. They were so happy to be performing again. Almost every one of our artists, it was the first time they had performed since the beginning of the pandemic, and they were so thankful to be able to share their talents again in a safe way. And so that was really wonderful for all of us. Some of the things that we didn't really plan for was, I mean, we knew there would be lots of cancellations, but just the continued role of cancellations, that we just kept booking and booking and booking and booking and cancel and cancel and cancel and see what might stick. And so that was an interesting process to go through, particularly in the fall. Part of it was the shows we were presenting, trying to present in the fall. And we learned that there were certain profiles of shows that were easier to get to the Lead Center than others. Bringing a dance company, if they're not close by, is a challenge. Dance companies really aren't touring across the nation. They're staying close to their home. But a smaller ensemble or a solo artist, they're more willing to come, and we had better luck, in a small ensemble or a solo artist. So that the changing cancellations were definitely a big challenge. Although we got very good at all the communication about the, new schedule, new date, and it's kind of like, same old business now. How low would our attendance be? That was one of the biggest guessing points, was like, okay, we're going to have these shows, who all's going to come? So Derrick Davis, Phantom of the Opera, our Phantom, we sold over 30,000 tickets to him, or to the Phantom of the Opera a year before his performance, his solo show in Lincoln. We thought, oh, we could sell 1,000 tickets to the Phantom in our show. Been in Lion King and Phantom on Broadway. People love Broadway in Lincoln, Nebraska. So 30,000 normal. Can't we get 1,000 in Lincoln for his show? And we ended up getting about 600. So while we were pleased with the 600, it just showed us just how people were not, a limited number of people were ready to get back out. And so that was something. So we've been experiencing 20 to 30% of attendance, compared to a normal event. If you normally get 1,000, you'd probably get 200 to 300. So that's been kind of what we've been experiencing. We didn't anticipate the December surge. Once we reopened, we thought we'd probably be able to stay open since we provide such a safe environment. We were not required to close in December, but we felt, all over the nation, the rates were so bad. And our public message was, stay home unless you critically have to go. And so we didn't have to close down, but we chose to close back down in December and parts of January, because we wanted to reinforce the safe choice for everybody in the community, unless it's an essential visit somewhere, is to stay home. So that was something that we hadn't anticipated, that we had to change. Our Nutcracker was during that time frame. It got moved to March. Canadian Brass moved to May, and now they're doing a non-holiday show. We did do, as I mentioned, we've done lots of virtual shows in addition to in-person shows. And we had a local artist that we were able to add at the last minute that does popular holiday music. And we did a live virtual only concert with that, which was great. In terms of programming, who is touring? And so that's one of who's willing to come to Lincoln. And so we talked to a lot of different agents, and just, mostly of artists that we might normally be interested in, but also we looked at some that we had never heard of before. But most of the artists were artists that were already on our radar, but we knew would a smaller artist, maybe geographically they're not so far. We had artists from Kansas City, from Denver, although we had artists from Florida, California, and New York come and be part of our season this year. We did not change our artistic quality considerations. We were committed to that we weren't going to do anything that we wouldn't normally present in terms of quality. We targeted artists that have normal fees ranging from $5,000 to $20,000 normally. Those are a little easier to make the numbers work. Still challenging. And we did 2 shows in a day, or 2 shows over 2 days rather than 1. And the artists were really wonderful and flexible with us, understanding what our capacity challenges were. So they did 2 shows basically for the price of 1. Unfortunately, due to the limited demand, we had the 2 shows, but we rarely were able to sell all the tickets. So had we only done one show, we would have been sold out. But we did a little better with the 2 shows. But so that was something that was kind of interesting. We balanced a lot of our programming out, with virtual programming. Knowing that we couldn't bring in dance companies, so we don't have a lot of professional top of the world dance companies, near Lincoln, Nebraska, and so we had Ronald K. Brown, Evidence Dance. We did a virtual show with that. And other Step Africa, we did a virtual programming with. And so we've really supplemented our in-person programs with virtual programs, Rhapsody in Black. There's a lot of great things out there. Some of the things that have been interesting is that younger demographic shows, not a surprise, did a little better than shows that had an older demographic. Older demographic have been, a little bit more cautious about going out. So Mike Super, Michael Londra and Celtic Fire, Dino Light, all had some of the best attendance of our in-person events this year. However, I think that's about to change because of the vaccinations. And so I think we will see more older folks come out, into the near future. So that's a little bit some things we've been doing.
Sure. What's been your experience related on those topics, Charles, in Dallas?
Well, all of this started in 1920 season, because spring of 20. So when we went into 2021, we decided to do only American companies, companies based in America, because we usually are half and half international and American. And that sort of fell apart as we were moving through the pandemic, because a lot of these American companies that we're doing, Alvin Ailey, Complexions, Alonzo King, have foreign dancers who went home during the initial lockdown and couldn't get back into the country. So we had a lot of those issues that we sort of learned from. Being American-based didn't necessarily mean it was going to be easier to accomplish. We've also had complications. In the modern world, you don't have as much of this as you do in the ballet world, but unions, the dance companies that have union dancers were much more restricted in what they were willing or able to do than the union companies. And so that's been an ongoing problem. Moving into the current upcoming season, we were going to go all American again, but in talking with the agents and managers that we work with, visas have not become the issue that we thought that they were going to be. They are lightening up. Visas are being issued. The biggest hurdle right now with the internationals is the restrictions around travel and the quarantines on both sides of the engagement. We can no longer just worry about getting them to our city. We have to be mindful of where is the dance company or the artist going to after us? Because, for instance, one company that we're working with in a couple of months is going to New York State after us. And there's a mandate that they have to do a 10-day quarantine because they're coming from a non-contiguous state. And they had a signed contract. So we had to move our date to accommodate that. And so we just go, note to self, this is going to be an ongoing thing this whole year, is we're going to have to work with the companies and agents to develop protocols to handle all of that. With that said, and knowing that we had at maximum 30% capacity of any of the halls, and also the Moody, the 750 hall that was city run, was completely shut down. There was it was not an option. We did not have the ability to develop our own protocols. The city shut it down. It's been available for filmings and rehearsals and things, but it can't be used. It's not open to the public until later this upcoming month. So we went to all the agent managers of the companies that we were presenting and said, here is our capacity. We have to renegotiate a fee. It is impossible. It's inappropriate to think that the presenters can bear this financial burden. We don't want to hurt anyone in this process, but to restart the engine, the touring engine, someone posted a question about this. To restart the touring engine, in my opinion, the only way that that can be done is for all three entities in the touring equation share the burden: the company, the agent manager, and the presenter. We all are going to have to bear the burden of some of these painful losses. It's the only way to restart the engine. For companies to maintain their dancers and to continue to work, you have to have engagements. And to have engagements, we have to have capacity to sell these tickets. And right now we're at 30%. So what we did with our contracts with the artists is that here's what we can pay you. We're happy to do a profit share, which is not the normal case in dance companies, if we clear the production budget. And if by some miraculous miracle, same thing, by some miracle, we're all back to normal and everybody's coming back and we're all open at 100% potential capacity, then we can renegotiate the contract to the normal fees that we would normally be paying. And though it was difficult, everybody agreed to it because it was fair. We weren't hiding anything. We simply said, this is the real life scenario of where we are with potential. We may have this big theater, but we can, of 2,200 seats, we can only sell 600 of them at max. So it changed the way we worked, but it has all been about collaboration and communication to get through this whole thing. And that's the way we've been doing it. So moving forward, we haven't announced our new season, but we are going to do 7 companies instead of 10. We are going to do 2 international companies in the mix because we feel like we can pull it off. And if something happens, then, this is the time for problem solvers. We'll just simply solve the problem. Another change will come and we'll figure it out. But we are hopeful that the coming season, we're going to be able to pull it off with greater audiences and to start, getting back to the profile that Titus normally has with international dance companies. But we're moving forward, but it's been a challenging process. One of the things I've said to a lot of people through all of this, you have to find a support group. I have this group of CEOs that we talk every week, and then I have this other group of people that run small nonprofits, and we talk every 2 weeks. And I have another group of gay CEOs that we talk twice a month. And it has been enormously helpful to share the burden of the stress that this creates, trying to figure out how to present companies, how to keep your employees employed, how to just keep going during this extraordinary time. And it has been enormously important to have support to get through this thing and to stay positive.
You bring up such a great I like the way you have a consistent message around collaboration and communication, Charles. And you started to talk about that collaboration piece and, of course, finding that inner circle of people for support. But we've had a couple questions in the chat, and maybe we'll just hit on one before we move to the next section. And the questions have had to do with how is it going to be possible for us to put together tours so that we can get artists that can come to multiple venues instead of just one-offs. Everyone, of course, from a touring standpoint, wants to go to Lincoln, Nebraska, but as you're looking to bring together a route or a block booking, Bill, are you working with the Plains presenters? Bill, Charles, what are you seeing in terms of the questions really around how can we work together to get tours back up on the road? Any thoughts before we move to the next section?
Yeah, we definitely have been working with the Plains presenters, members. Plains presenters is the Midwest of the United States. And I've been watching, nationally who's presenting, not only in the Midwest, but anywhere. And I'm hopeful that as time goes by, infection rates go down, more vaccinations, that more people will be trying to reopen. And I think, I think that's a role that APAP can help us with, communicating who is open and presenting, as well as the regional Arts Midwest and WA, and of just that block booking function. And I know for us, initially I was reaching out to lots of people like in the fall saying, hey, I've got the musical coming. Anybody want to join my tour? I ended up being solo because nobody else was comfortable, spending that money, because it was an investment, of being able to cover the fee, and we didn't make money on it. We haven't really made money on anything we've presented this year. And we've been able to balance the budget with our programs thanks to the generosity of donors and sponsors and endowments. And so, I think we're fortunate at the Lead Center, that we do have a generous donor base and, some endowments that, help us with programming that other venues may not have. But if you do have those resources, you may, you're better off to not be closed and to utilize them and get out there and be active and, be engaged with your audiences, support artists, both in your own community as well as nationally. And I'm really thankful for the choices that we've made. And I have more people who didn't have to get laid off because of our choices. We did some pro formas, and what would the staffing look like if we reopened versus if we closed, and probably 30% difference at least in our layoffs. And we wanted to keep our staff employed. And also we want to support Nebraska artists and national artists and do it in a safe way.
Got it. Any thoughts, Ross?
Yeah, I think, well, Bill said something that we all have to just say to ourselves, this is not a year that none of us are planning to make money. We're all planning on losing money. It's about restarting our field, getting, the business of the arts restarted. So we all recognize that. And again, it's all about collaboration and communication. With the companies that we have coming up, like we have Alonzo King coming in June and Complexions, they have the same agent manager who is very, very capable, Margaret Selby. And it's been interesting in this process with this summer. Normally I'm not involved. These agents are very capable of putting together a tour. They know who to call, but I've been sharing, because I'm a dance only presenter. There are specific presenters out there that are doing a lot of dance or that do dance at all. So I've been really sharing, here's what we're thinking, here's what we're doing. We've been talking to Swap Up, but I've been specifically talking to the presenters in the region that do a lot of dance to say, here's what we have coming. Maybe this is a good chance for you to, to hook onto the tour. And again, it's just been sharing information. A lot of times presenters don't announce who they're doing because, but we have been sharing that information much more readily than normal. Someone had asked about, like Bill had said about keeping our employees and trying to not lay off people. Someone asked about whether or not we used PPP funding. Absolutely. We are, and I'm in the throes of getting ready for the SVOG opening that's going to happen on the 8th to apply for that. But we have availed ourselves to all of these processes that are out there and funds that are available to keep your company alive. But
Great.
Absolutely.
Yep, thank you. And we are, staff and I are going through to keep a list of questions. So we have one final question for the two of you, which is actually a three-part question. And then we're going to just get straight over to the questions that we've been keeping track of from our participants. So the final question before we really just move into the Q&A section is, what are 3 things you would advise your colleagues to be thinking about and doing now? So for everyone on this call that is just on the throes of getting ready to reopen, and maybe you've already hit on it, but very succinctly provide us with just 3 thoughts for what they should be focused on. One of you want to start?
Sure. Well, one thing that in terms of I'm thinking is many of the shows we're going to be booking for next year, including especially the fall, looking for things that have a relatively good demand and interest. And we feel like will help also keeping the volume of the shows moderate and maybe a little lower than normal. We're not going to go all out, although it's a little crazy that we have had as many shows this year as we normally would between virtual and in person, which some people think I might be crazy for have done that in the past year. And I might not argue with them. Don't be afraid to present shows this fall. I know I've heard a lot of my colleagues, they're waiting to the spring. And just from my own experience at the Leeds Center, there's so much value in reopening and having programs. And just, I think it will ease everybody into getting back, and the sooner that everyone is presenting and they're back in the theater and they're comfortable, they're talking with their friends, the faster everyone's recovery will be. And I don't think you want to be left out either, because I think, things are going to start rolling and you don't want to be, closed and waiting around. I think we're going to see a lot of things this summer, outdoor events, and I think arenas are going to be opening. Obviously sports have barely shut down in a lot of ways, and the arts community, I think we should be reopening. Maybe consider a summer attraction and some way to celebrate the end of the pandemic and connect with your community. We're planning on keeping the mask requirement for some time. Dr. Fauci, referenced that in multiple appearances he's had. So it may not be, as accepted in the future as it currently is. And I'm hopeful that everyone will continue to be cooperative in our audience, but we are planning, as long as there's a risk to people and the infection rate is present, we want to provide the safest environment and the most confident for people to be able to come back to our venue. And so I think that could be a challenge, and looking forward to seeing everybody open up.
Yep. Okay. 3 things from your perspective, Charles.
I'm lumping them together. Don't get overwhelmed. This is the time for problem solvers. You know, it's all about logistics. You have to be creative, flexible, and determined, and it can get done. I think stay calm. Leadership is about setting an example. It's not always about barking out orders. It's about setting that example. So stay calm, and to listen and be transparent. I mean, there's so much information out there. Like I said before, it's all, for me, it's all about communication and collaboration. And so you've got to listen to what's going on out there. And finally, just to realize that you can't make everybody happy, so don't try. Do your best to do the best job possible, listen to everything, but you can't make everybody happy. So, but I think it's really critical in this time to maintain your mental health so that we can make these creative decisions. And you know, I'm with Bill, present, because people are wanting to go to things. And we'll have another surge, and we'll have some more, you know, something's going to come up. I would be stupid to think that we're not, but we'll just solve the problem.
Fantastic. Great perspectives that you've shared, gentlemen. We're going to segue and start taking questions from the chat. There's one category of questions that we really haven't hit on, and that has to do with staffing and rebuilding. So I think you both mentioned PPP, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant on April 8th that's coming up. But all of those things have impact the funding around what we're able to do with staffing and rebuilding the staff. So would each of you like to share just a couple thoughts on where you're at with staffing and how you plan to rebuild your staff?
Well, I'll go brief. I'm very brief. I have a small staff. We were able to maintain everybody. So we have not had to do anything. Now, our partner, the center, who's a much bigger staff, they had to make some very hard decisions, and you know, they're working on rebuilding, but we're a small staff, a very lean team, so we were able to maintain with PPP funding and hopefully SVOG. So we have been lucky in that respect.
Staffing, funding for staffing has been very challenging for us. As part of the University of Nebraska, we were excluded from the Paycheck Protection Program last year. And so we didn't get any funds from Paycheck Protection Program, which made it very difficult. We had about 30% staff reductions. Part of those were furloughs where they worked fewer hours, and part of those were layoffs. And thanks to our vibrant event schedule and the donations that we received, we did receive some funding from the state of Nebraska at the end of the year. We've been able to bring back our furloughed staff. All of our laid off staff positions are still vacant, and we're struggling with the event schedule that we have, not having our full team with us. And we found that the work that we're doing with both virtual programming, in-person programming, all the cleaning, all the calendar changes, it's more work than ever. And to do that with less staff is a real challenge. And so we're planning on, we're currently working on a staffing recovery plan of, which positions are we bringing back? We're hopeful that we'll be able to be part of the Shuttered Venue Operating Grant, but again, as part of a university, it's a tough road. And I think all the university performing arts centers, we're kind of an interesting group because we don't all communicate together in one group. And I appreciate APAP's efforts as well as other organizations in trying to get access and include us, in this really critical support. And we'll kind of see what happens for everybody once this grant is open. But we're still not totally confident that university performing arts centers are going to be able to apply for the Shuttered Grant program or be able to get any PPP. And so it really challenging. Universities are struggling their own because they've got huge budget cuts and their own financial challenges. They really don't have resources to help performing arts centers.
Right.
So a challenging time.
Related to staffing, Bill, I know one of the magic, wonderful parts of the Lead Center's secret to success is your amazing staff of volunteers. How have you worked with the volunteers that you have? Have they all come back? Are you doing retraining? Do you have new volunteers? What's that looking like for you these days?
Yeah, volunteers, we have some of the most amazing volunteers in the world, as well as I'm so fortunate that we couldn't have done everything we've done without incredible staff. I mean, the dedication, the hours our staff have put in this past year have been amazing. So big shout out to all the Lead Center team. I can't say enough good about all of them on the streaming and the safety and health. So volunteers have been challenging. Most of our volunteers are older, and so many of them were staying home. Also we had quite a few brave souls that knew the Lead Center was a safe place and trusted us. And they came back and they volunteered. And we've had a smaller crew than normally all year, but we also had smaller audiences. So it all worked out, and we're super thankful for those people who came out before the vaccines. And now that people are getting vaccinated, more and more of our volunteers are returning. And I'm pleased to say that all of our volunteers have remained healthy the entire year during their time at the Lead Center. So I'm very thankful that the medical recommendations were right. We trusted them and we did it, and it turned out well.
So you said two things that actually came up in the chat in terms of other questions. Maybe the two of you could weigh in on your thoughts around vaccinations. Do you see any point where you'll require staff to present vaccination cards? What do you think? And then there's a lot of questions around international artists, and if once everybody's vaccinated, is that going to help us get international artists back into our venues? But starting with vaccinations, any thoughts on how that's going to play into your next steps organizationally?
Well, I know in Dallas, in the Arts District, one of the major arts organizations is requiring vaccinations of all their staff, and it's a big staff. And they've gone through the hurdles of whether or not that's legal or not. So I think that's going to start happening. I don't see us requiring that of patrons, but I think it will very easily become a requirement to get I'm just, as my opinion, it may become a requirement to get a visa as a touring artist, may be highly likely coming down the road. And I'm working on another project right now with the State Department, and there was discussions about these foreign artists and how they might try to develop a program to get all of these artists coming into the country that are in this program vaccinated before they come, which I thought is a tremendously great idea. Do a one and done, a J&J or AstraZeneca kind of shot where it's one and done would be incredibly impactful, because it is going to be a big deal. And I've had one dance company already tell me that they are fully vaccinated, top to bottom, in their company. And I told them, you need to lead with that. In this current year, as you're talking to people about bringing your company, you need to lead with that. That's going to be a big deal. And, we are going to, this whole thing about vaccination passports is going to be coming up. And I'm waiting to see what that really means and what that means for the business, but it will be an issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we'll see with the vaccination requirements. I have a feeling that while many of us would like to see it be a requirement, that freedom of choice very well may win out, by law. We'll have to see. I'm not a legal expert, but just based on how mask wearing, has gone nationally and freedom of choice. I think I won't be surprised to see us not having vaccination requirements and us needing to do massive vaccination encouragement promotion campaigns of why it's important for us to get vaccinated and how we can encourage our audiences and our artists to be vaccinated and convince that it's safe and that it's recommended and keeps everybody healthy. It helps the economy. It helps touring artists come back, helps American artists go across the board, helps travel. It really is the key to everything. But if I was wagering in Vegas, I would probably wager that it will be free will vaccinations in terms of government requirements. Some organizations might be able to require it based on who they are and whether it's private or public. But I think there'll be lots of people who don't get vaccinated, unfortunately, and that it won't be required by everybody everywhere.
And Bill, I believe you mentioned this, but we did have a question around if operating plans have been reviewed by healthcare professionals. I believe you specifically mentioned you have a partner with the university that has reviewed your plans.
Yes,
right?
Ours were based on the University of Nebraska Medical Center. We had medical professionals as part of the University of Nebraska COVID-19 task force, as well as the Lancaster City of Lincoln Health Department, which also had health professionals that reviewed all of our plans from top to bottom and made changes from our initial plans to make sure we thought through every single possible safety issue and followed through on it. And we've been really appreciative of their involvement, advice, and very pleased that we were able to fulfill everything and all the expectations and provided a healthy and safe environment for everybody. And everybody's remained healthy during this past year.
Yep, lots of wood. You, Charles, how about you?
We did the same thing with the CEO group. Was as we were developing these reentry programs, we got medical advice. I mean, it would be silly not to, really. We had to have experts come in and guide us on these processes, and to really just stay apolitical about this. We just had to deal with trying to be guided by the CDC guidelines as to help us make our decisions and try to stay out of any politics.
Hear, hear. Well, we have about 8 minutes left, I think, in our time together. I think we could have just time for some final thoughts, and I think Krista may want to pop back on for her own final thoughts. From my perspective, and then I'll toss it to each of you, I think my big takeaways were from Charles, and I'm just going to say connecting, collaborating, and communicating. And I think that really, to me, ties back to APAP and all the things we're able to do together. So I very much appreciate each of you and your sharing information. I know APAP is committed to making sure the community as our professionals are coming back together to continue this dialogue. So thank you for your time today. Final thoughts, Charles and Bill, and then we'll kick it over to Krista.
Well, I do want to thank APAP for putting this together. There's so many questions, and it's such a tumultuous time, and we're all uncertain. I think Bill and I are lucky that we've been able to do what we've been able to do. But I appreciate you guys putting together a forum where we can just share some experiences. I know I'm fully open to anyone that wants to email or call. I'm happy to talk about anything that's going on or processes or decisions that we made. But thank you, APAP, for taking the lead and making this thing, this format available to everybody.
I would like to echo my thanks in providing this forum and giving us the opportunity to share, how we've been able to bring the arts back to Lincoln, Nebraska, and keeping them alive. And just, further want to encourage everyone to get out there and bring the arts to the community. That it is possible to do it in a safe way. I do think that we don't know what's in our future. We think we know what's coming up, but I think we're going to consistently see changes, whether it's capacity and masks and vaccination issues and challenges of international travel. We're not out of the woods yet, but I will say that as long as you're willing to keep forward and moving through the challenges, that it's successful. And it's really meant a lot to me how artists have been so wanting to work with us, and that everybody's just, I can't think of a time when more people have come together to problem solve and make things work than this past year. And the generosity of our donors and the importance of the arts, and that they really do, there's so much joy, the artists, as I mentioned, crying backstage with joy, and patrons, just thrilled to be back in the theater. And I know everyone, once you reopen, you're going to experience that wonderful moment of being open, and the artists just sharing their talents, and it will be those great moments that you've been longing for a long time. So best of luck to everyone. I know it's good times are ahead.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Laura, Charles, Bill, for sharing these great insights and your experience today. Thank you for taking the lead and being guinea pigs for the field, and allowing us to listen in and learn from you. And thanks to all of you who joined us. The recording will be available on our website soon. We'll also be sending out a brief survey about today's webinar to our participants today. And we have a number of events coming up in the next couple of days. So I just want to draw your attention to this. Tomorrow, we have a webinar at 3:30 Eastern time. The Arts Are Ready, APAP and our 10-20-30 Pledge Roundtable discussion, where you can learn a little bit more about what went into that pledge and talk together about the ways that it's showing up for you and the challenges that you may be facing, and how we can be a supportive ally in moving the work forward together. Next week, we have our APAP member-led webinar, University Presenters Working Toward Equity. That's happening on Monday at 12 o'clock. April 8th, we have a special sponsored innovation session with Overture. And April 14th, we have our next Reopening the Arts Outside session on talking about the joys and challenges of outdoor programming. So it's part of our series about reopening, and you'll be able to hear from colleagues in the field. We have lots of people that are actually open now, and we will plan on continuing to bring them forward so that we can have honest and frank conversations and we can all learn from each other. So thank you so much for joining us today. Let us know what else we can be doing in terms of resources and information to help you navigate this challenging but wild and exciting time. We're here for you. And as Lisa said, we're stronger together. So have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.